I'm excited to bring in our last guest. I do always appreciate the time of all of our elected leaders because they bring an important voice to the show. And with that, let's go ahead and bring in our state senator, Jim Ananich. He is the Michigan 27th district and also our Senate minority leader. Great to have you with us.
Here, thanks.
Hey, I see you're very active on Twitter.
It's where people get a lot of their information now. So I'm not the most comfortable with it, but I'm trying to be as accessible as possible.
I think it's great. So many more elected leaders should be doing that as well because I've seen some of your tweets, like you're using the video, and immediately too. How has it been for you to be able to use social media to directly reach the people you represent?
Yeah, I think, traditionally it was just sort of newsletters, emails, before emails, calling people. And now there's just so many different avenues and people get their information different ways. And you want to try to reach people as many different ways as possible. I haven't used it yet. I even set up a Parler account, which is sort of the right wing, or the conservative social media tool. I just wanted to figure, hey, I got constituents. I'm a Democrat, but I represent all my constituents. So I'm trying to reach them wherever they're at. And they may not like everything I do, but I want to make sure they know what I'm doing.
That's a great viewpoint to have. I'm with you. I haven't been on Parler yet, but I know other people that are. And we have to be able to, see what's happening on all platforms, because if you just have one view, then you're not reaching everyone. And, especially as someone such as yourself, you're our elected leader.
Yeah, that's the way I kind of look at it. I get the Daily Wire, I get Breitbart. Obviously, I watch Fox occasionally. Of course, I still watch MSNBC, CNN, New York Times. I just try to have shows like this. I try to watch a wide variety of things. I do a lot of podcasts now, so I just want to make sure I'm getting as much different viewpoints, and so that when I'm making decisions, I'm thinking about things from all perspectives and trying to challenge myself to make sure that I'm understanding at least the other point of view, whether or not I agree with it or not.
So with that, we are seeing party politics, not only throughout the country and in D.C., but also we're seeing some party politics there in Lansing. A lot of it having to do with the COVID-19 relief money. Can you give us an update?
Yeah, so obviously the federal government has sent a number of different tranches of money to states all across the country, some even to local governments. So far, it's not been the most prettiest process, but we've usually figured out a way to get to agreement on it. The first 3 different times, I believe, I think there was 3 different ones so far, we came together, we compromised, and we put together pretty good packages that we think work pretty well for helping people at this unprecedented time. Right now, we have a large chunk of federal dollars just sitting here. We put out our plan last week or the week before of how to spend those dollars to get students back in school and make parents and teachers, because there's a lot of stress on families right now. It's very difficult to have your kid trying to learn through a laptop or a hybrid model, or even in school right now. And we have to do better to make sure that these parents have the tools, these teachers have the tools. My wife's a teacher. It's a struggle. It's just no question about it. We've got to help small businesses that are struggling. All these different avenues. We have a different way of life right now, and we have to acknowledge that first, and then make sure we come together to give solutions. And I said this yesterday on the floor. If you don't like our plan, fine. Present your plan, and let's compromise and get something out. But holding on to federal dollars, it doesn't do anything. We can't just spend it on something else. It has to be spent on relief for COVID. So we should do it together. There's times for politics. Look, this is. I'm not naive. I don't pretend like this isn't. That there's not going to be differences and not going to have fights. But on this stuff, we should come together and say, let's figure it out for folks.
We would appreciate that. All of us little people that are taxpayers. I will say, tell your wife thank you for what she's doing, because teachers have it so hard right now as well.
It's really tough.
But why is it that it was just a few months ago that schools were forced to close down, but yet now there's a big push to reopen them? And I understand the numbers are down right now in the state, but what happens if we see another huge uptick?
Yeah, I think the Republican plan out of the House was basically, we're going to hold this money over your head. We want big government to decide that you have to go back to school. I know at least from our perspective, we want to give school districts the tools so that when they reopen up, whether it's fully every kid in the classroom or whether it's some hybrid version where a lot of parents just don't feel comfortable sending their kids to school. They want them to stay home or do some version where they go in some of the time and some of the time they stay home. People, local communities should have that choice. Families should have that choice. The government should not decide that for them. So our plan would be to basically give them the tools if they choose to go back all in person to make sure that we have the resources they need. And they closed down last year, and then this year was kind of a decision up to the local districts. How they wanted to do it, and now there's this push to say, well, we know best. Like I said, the House Republican plan is we know best. Trust us. We're gonna hold this money over your head unless you do these certain things. And that's just not the kind of approach we think makes sense. But, hopefully we can get those resources out to schools and families and teachers so that they can do what's best for their community. And I think eventually get kids back into classrooms like they used to be.
It seems like it's so far away, right, to have school the way it used to be. And I wonder, though, how many kids are falling between the cracks right now, because you worry about the kids' school was their safe place. And even in the hybrid model right now, there are kids that aren't being counted right now. No one really knows where they are.
Yeah, what we need to, I think the major focus, in my opinion, I was a teacher before I came to Lansing, is let's make sure the kids' well-being is first, right? And that whatever model that is, let's make sure we're thinking about the kids' health first. And then obviously make sure we're educating our kids. And we're going to have to put resources to catching them up. There's just no question about it. And to play politics with that is crazy, because nobody across this country, whether you're a kindergartner or a senior in high school, had the year that they wanted to have, right? And that's no one's fault other than the coronavirus and the fact that, we didn't have much of a national plan. Hopefully, it seems like we do now, that they're starting to come out with a real robust plan to get teachers vaccinated, to get schools back open again. That's important. We tried to pretend like it wasn't a virus, like it wasn't a real thing last year. Now, obviously, I think as a country, we're taking it very serious. But a lot of kids are being left behind. A lot of kids are struggling with this isolation. We have to get our hands around this virus. And I'm glad that President Biden is taking such a serious approach to it, because if you don't handle the virus, you can't do anything else.
So what are your thoughts about implementing the standardized test again, at least as a baseline to try to figure out where kids are today?
I think we should get a baseline for sure. Whether it's a normal standardized test that we used to do under normal times, I don't know if that's the best approach. But I think there are plenty of baseline tests out there to get a feel for how much learning loss happened. And to act like it didn't happen that's silly, right? Because it happened. The only thing that we know is it happened to everybody, right? So no one's falling more behind. Well, maybe there's different levels of loss, but we all know that no one's where they need to be. So we can make sure that we put the resources, whether it's in elementary, middle school, high school, or in college, to get people caught up to where they need to be. I think we don't want to panic and make sure that families are not panicking about this. We need to make sure we give them the resources and the tools to make sure their families and their kids get what they need. I think we can do that. I really do. I mean, I don't think that's some far off thing that's impossible. I think that's something we can definitely give to families to make sure that they feel comfortable going into next school year, that their kid is where they need to be.
What grade does your wife teach?
She's in high school.
High school. I will say you're a former educator, but now you're an elected leader. You're a person with influence and power. Can we bring back old style math?
I'd be happy to do that. I don't understand the new stuff.
Right? I'm like, no, I am not smarter than a fifth grader.
It's writing a book report to figure out a math problem doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But, that's probably why I was a social studies teacher. But
we're joined by Senator Jim Ananich on the Oakland County MegaCast. He is the senator for the 27th District and a Michigan Senate Minority Leader as well. And you talk about improving education in the classroom for these schools and testing learning loss. Another issue we've seen come up, and this was pre-pandemic and only exacerbated by the pandemic, is access to equal or at least quality resources in our school buildings, and in particular water. You are involved in the Filter First legislation that would work to make sure all Michigan schools have filtered water for kids to drink. And we spoke with the Oakland County Water Resources Commissioner yesterday about regional and statewide efforts to improve the quality of our state water and our water resources. How important is it to get each of these school districts specific standards of water for students to have access to during the day, especially as they're going back in to in-person learning statewide?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's to the point that Ronnie made earlier. This sometimes the school is the most safe place for these kids until we can get them into a safe environment all the time, right? So if this is where you're getting your healthy meal, this is where you're getting your required amount of water a day, we should make sure that when we put them in a building that they're required to go to, that it's as safe as possible for them. And so our bill, Senator Kurt Vanderwall, Republican, and myself, came up with this concept last session. We've introduced it again. It was in the governor's budget this time, so we're hopeful that we can get some movement on it. Is basically we should assume that these older school buildings have some issues with their water, whether it comes to lead or some other issues, and we should put a filter on first as we're starting to replace the lines or the issues in the building. Having grown up and live and represent in Flint, we knew this was the case in our schools in Flint, and in many cases across the state, we're going to have this problem. So you put the filter on first, and you protect the children and the teachers that are in the building, and then you look to see if there's problems. The worst thing happens is you give kids a little bit better water, and the best thing is you find that the worst thing is you protect them while you replace the lines. The best thing is you give them just better water, and then there is no lead issues. But it's always better to make that decision from a standpoint of protecting, and then finding out you don't have a problem than the other way around.
It really is a shame that we're still talking about this issue, but we are in the middle of a pandemic, and it makes me wonder how many important issues are being put on the back burner right now because we are so focused on the COVID-19 crisis.
Well, I think we're trying. I'm not in the House anymore. Obviously, it's been a number of years since I'm there, and I'm sure they're doing the same thing. But a number of us, obviously you see the news, and it looks like all we do, everyone in politics just hates each other and fights. That's not what really happens on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, when someone does something or says something inappropriate, it is my responsibility to get up and to correct the record. But the conversations that are happening otherwise are very, very robust. They're very productive. Like I said, Kurt Vanderwall is a Republican, and he and I see eye to eye on this. A bunch of my colleagues are working with Republicans on bills of all different natures. So we're trying to chew gum and walk at the same time. Right? We kind of have a plan. There's kind of a plan in place for COVID. It's just making sure we follow it and inform people. Like you guys were mentioning at the beginning of the show, it's really just about educating people. There's so much information out there, and a lot of it's not accurate, right? And it's just getting people information to experts and let them make their own decisions. There are universal things like we should be socially distancing, we should be wearing masks, we should be washing our hands when we're out in public with individuals until we get this COVID under control. Obviously, vaccinations are now becoming online. We should be getting back to some sense of normalcy in this year. So we should be doing that along with the other work that's really important. And I think water quality is one of those ones that is not a partisan issue, and it sure as heck shouldn't be.
It really is a shame of what happened in Flint, and sadly the issue is still not completely resolved there as well. But I have to ask you, Senator, do sometimes you feel like you're living a real life game of whack-a-mole? Because when you're dealing with one thing, you try to address that issue, and then 4 more pop up, and then you handle them, and here's 3 more.
Oh, there's no question about it. And this is going to sound a little hokey for some people, and it's not. I'll be honest with you. I'm an old school guy. I grew up in a working class town. About a year ago, right when the pandemic started, a friend of mine recommended meditation. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know about that. I'm nothing against anybody who does it. I started doing it. Just a little bit of that, even just sort of sitting there, just sort of focusing my mind for 10 minutes. It helps me a lot because there are so many things we got to deal with. All of us do. And you don't want to spend all your time just screaming at your family, right? Which is happening more and more, right? People are having trouble dealing with this isolation and this fear. And we have to find a way to make sure that we don't live in fear. And the way to do that is to protect yourself, is to reach out to people, and have conversations and making sure you're not isolating yourself, because it's really tough on our kids. But like you're saying, I just try to address it one at a time. I don't, I'm not Superman. I'm not going to solve every problem. I just try to do the best I can. And it's tough though. But I'll tell you that a little bit of 10 minutes of meditating in the morning helps me out a lot. And it's not the end all be all, and it may not be for everybody. But if you don't acknowledge that we're dealing with this, and this is a tough thing for us all to be dealing with, and a lot of people feel isolated and alone. There's something wrong with them. There is nothing wrong with you. This is a tough time right now. We're gonna get through it together.
So much true. Before the schools shut down, I know back in the city of Detroit, they did. It was basically like a pilot program where they had the kids doing yoga and meditating, and they saw great benefits. Their test scores went up, their discipline problems went down. So don't laugh, you're not alone. There's even an app for people. It tells you when to breathe. Just take a breath. It's all okay. And like you said, we're all in this together right now, and it's okay to admit when you are stressed out. Hey, before we let you go, I know that you have the My Supply legislation that you've introduced. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I think when we got in the beginning of this pandemic, every state, all across, even the country, was where we were hunting. We were out trying to bid each other out for testing supplies, for PPE masks, all the things that we now are just part of our daily life. And in many cases, we had to go beg, borrow, and steal from China and other countries that not here in our own country. Obviously, a lot of folks, especially in Michigan, because we're a manufacturing company, started to volunteer to make these masks and things of that nature, and that's great. But going forward, I think we should operate as if we don't know what the future is going to hold, and we should be prepared going forward, whether we have a pandemic, whether we have a 100-year flood like we did in Midland, and restock our emergency. Everyone has an emergency kit at their house, or should, right? The state should restock its emergency kit for the state. And I think we can do that here. We were the arsenal of democracy. We're the people that put the world on wheels. We should be the place that restocks our emergency kit. And that's exactly what the bill would do. It would form a board. My bill would call for the manufacturing of that material by the state, but I'd be happy to work with private companies to make sure that we have their expertise, or they be the ones that manufacture it, and we sort of store it and logistically handle it. So if there's a flood, instead of waiting days or weeks, you can have it within hours. If there is another a pandemic of this nature, we can have people having masks within hours and days, not weeks and months. These are just things I think just make common sense, and I'm hoping to get some movement on the bill, and that people see the value in what I'm trying to do here.
And it is really important because we also have to keep in mind some of these products do have a shelf life. If they're not used, you can't just pull them out. There is a shelf life to them to make sure that they are, can be used in the way that they're designed to be used. Senator, just about 30 seconds here left with you on the MegaCast. Anything maybe we didn't touch on happening up there in Lansing that you want to share?
No, I mean, I think, obviously, as I mentioned before, we got these federal dollars, and I hope that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle start to come to the table and say, let's get these out to people that need them. And hopefully that happens. And I'm still hopeful that's going to happen, and that we're going to come to a settlement that helps everybody and takes the politics out of it, because I think that's what we need on this issue.
Oh, we definitely do, and we appreciate you recognizing that as well. And, not just the public, not just the schools, but we have so many small businesses struggling right now as well. And while there have been a lot of grants, sometimes getting that money is hard to do, and it also doesn't go as far as it needs to. Senator, thank you again for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Happy New Year, and it is a new year. See, we're living Groundhog Day here on the MegaCast. Take care. We appreciate your time.